What if everything you were taught about choice was an illusion? From the moment you're born, the world doesn't ask what you want, it hands you a script. You're told what success looks like, what failure means, which emotions to express and which to bury. You're rewarded for compliance, punished for deviation, and slowly you stop asking why. Most people think they're free because they can choose their phone, their job, or what toppings go on their pizza. But when it comes to real decisions, the ones that shape your life, most are running on autopilot. This isn't a modern glitch. Plato warned about it over 2,000 years ago. He described a cave. Inside it, prisoners are chained, facing a wall. Behind them, puppeteers cast shadows using firelight. The prisoners grow up watching these shadows, believing them to be reality. They name them, assign meaning to them, even argue about them. But none of it is real. It's only when one prisoner escapes and sees the sun that he realizes how deep the lie runs. And when he returns to free the others, they hate him for it. Now apply that to today. Who's controlling the shadows? Here's the uncomfortable part. Plato didn't just describe some ancient myth. He mapped the structure of modern control. Governments, media, educational systems, none of them need brute force to dominate. All they need is your agreement, your belief in the illusion, and they start young. In school, you're not taught to think. You're taught to memorize, obey, repeat. Questioning authority isn't encouraged, it's punished. You learn that being right means aligning with consensus, that silence is safer than dissent. By the time you graduate, you've internalized the idea that success is a standardized checklist. Get good grades, get a job, get a mortgage, retire quietly. This isn't education, it's programming. The German philosopher Dietrich Bonhoeffer had a term for this. He called it stupidity as a moral failing. Not because stupid people lack intelligence, but because they surrender their critical faculties to systems that think for them. A person who thinks can be reasoned with. A person who's been programmed, they're immune to reason. They don't act out of logic, they act out of conditioning. And that's by design. Because the moment you start asking real questions, why do I need to work 40 hours a week to survive? Why do billion-dollar corporations need tax breaks while ordinary people drown in debt? Why does social media reward outrage instead of truth? You become dangerous, not to your neighbor, to the system. This is where thinkers like Michel Foucault come in. Foucault argued that modern power doesn't rely on chains and cages. It operates through invisible forces, norms, institutions, labels. You don't need to be locked in a prison when you've been trained to police yourself. Surveillance becomes internal. You judge yourself before anyone else has to. You ask, is this normal, instead of, is this right? It's why people stay in jobs they hate, marriages that drain them, lifestyles they can't afford. They fear stepping outside the script, because when they do, they risk ridicule, isolation, failure. Not because they're weak, but because they've been conditioned to believe that obedience equals safety. Even the illusion of rebellion is accounted for. Think of how society packages freedom as products, lifestyles, or identity labels. You're not encouraged to break the system. You're encouraged to find a market-approved version of rebellion, one that still keeps you consuming, still keeps you compliant. Plato saw this too. He warned that democracies can collapse into tyranny, not through violence, but through apathy. When people stop caring about truth, when they prioritize comfort over principle, when they reject reason in favor of emotional noise, that's when the door opens to manipulation. The tyrant doesn't storm the gates, he walks through the front door, welcomed by a public too distracted to notice. It's not a conspiracy, it's conditioning. And the scariest part? Most people will fight to defend it, because once you've built your identity around the cage, freedom feels like a threat. Nietzsche called this the slave morality, the belief system that evolves when people can't get what they truly want, so they convince themselves they never wanted it to begin with. Instead of pursuing strength, autonomy, or truth, they glorify weakness, obedience, and suffering, not because they believe it's good, but because it's safe. You've probably seen it in action. Someone dreams of being a writer, but stays in a dead-end job and mocks those who chase dreams. A person stuck in a toxic relationship tells themselves that love is pain. Someone who's never traveled claims they never wanted to leave anyway. It's easier to rationalize the cage than to face the unknown outside of it. But not everyone stays chained. Some people start to see the cracks. A conversation, a crisis, a book, something shatters the illusion. They begin to question the script. And at first, it doesn't feel empowering, it feels terrifying. Because freedom isn't comfort, it's responsibility. It's losing the excuse of "I had no choice" and replacing it with "this is on me now." Most turn back, they re-enter the cave, but a few keep going. And once you've seen the machinery behind the curtain, the systems, the incentives, the manipulation, you can't unsee it. And this is where the real danger begins, not in the system itself, but in what happens when people start unplugging from it. Because systems don't like losing control. The moment someone opts out, speaks up, or refuses to play along, they're labeled extremist, contrarian, unhinged. Not because they're wrong, but because they've stopped being predictable. And unpredictability breaks the algorithm. This is why modern control systems aren't just about external forces. They're internal, self-policing, soft power disguised as self-help. You're encouraged to be yourself, but only within the acceptable parameters. Express yourself, but not too loudly. Think critically, but not about the system itself. The ancient Stoics understood this dynamic in a different way. Epictetus said, "Only the educated are free." Not because knowledge guarantees liberty, but because ignorance guarantees chains. If you don't understand how you're being manipulated, you'll confuse your compliance for morality, your suffering for virtue, your submission for peace. The trick is that the system doesn't need you to be happy. It just needs you to stay productive. You can be miserable, exhausted, lonely, as long as you keep working, buying, scrolling, and staying quiet. And if you break down, there's a product for that too. Medication, entertainment, distraction, it doesn't matter, as long as you never stop playing your part. But let's go back to Plato. He didn't think most people would ever leave the cave. In fact, he warned that the masses would always resist enlightenment, that democracy would become a popularity contest, that emotions would override reason, that people would trade freedom for comfort, truth for entertainment, and responsibility for scapegoats. And when that happened, the demagogue would rise, not by force, but by offering what people already crave: simplicity, certainty, someone to blame. And still, some escape. Not through violence, not through conspiracy, but through clarity. They stop chasing approval. They stop mistaking routine for meaning. They stop believing that fitting in is the same as being right. And instead of trying to fix the whole system, they begin by reclaiming the one thing that was stolen from them: agency. Because once you realize that your beliefs were handed to you, you get to ask, what do I actually think? Once you see how your desires were shaped, you can decide, what do I truly want? And once you understand that fear has been used to keep you quiet, you can ask, what's worth speaking up for? And that is when things start to change. Not overnight, not at scale, but internally, quietly, permanently. You were programmed to be powerless, but programs can be rewritten. And Plato wasn't just warning us, he was challenging us to stop watching shadows, to turn around, and to walk, blinded, stumbling, terrified, toward the light.